We are so glad that you're joining us online. We've had an awesome morning so far. The service was absolutely fire. You guys are in for a treat. So I don't know. Did you guys go outside though and enjoy the sunshine? Because it is a beautiful day out there. We got Craig McGlasson, and we were talking about what does it look like to give him our doubts. And he's got some real words of wisdom for you. So you're in for a treat. Grab a coffee, settle in, and enjoy the service. And we'll be back after to give you a little more insight to the day. All right, enjoy.
Good morning, Kensington. Let's go ahead and stand as we worship and we celebrate Jesus and everything he's done for us. Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over. No, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Yeah, sing that again. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, oh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame out the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good, 'cause failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Yeah, oh, failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, oh, lay your burdens down. Father's house, check your shame out the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. come home. The helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Yeah, and prison doors fling wide. Sing it. The dead. Love is when the Father's in the room, and miracles take place. The cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking, strongholds now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Oh, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Hey, come on, we say, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Yeah. Over every sin and every failure, every pain and every hurt, over every lie that has been spoken. Come on, you sing this. You are over the earth and all its kingdoms, and every idol made by man, every doubt and speculation. Oh, King Jesus, you are the great I am. Above it all, every name, all praise is yours. Above it all, you reign, let the earth rejoice. You have overcome the world, you will always be above it all. Yeah. Eternal joy here in your presence, as you are making all things new, in every people, tribe, and language, bowing down to you alone. But to the King who sits upon the throne, above it all, every name, all praise is yours. Above it all, you reign, let the earth rejoice. You have overcome the world, you will always be above it all. Above it all. Come on, sing Jesus. Jesus, no one is higher. Creation shouts your name as we sing, holy, holy, be enthroned upon our praise. For you alone are worthy, the slain and risen Lamb. All honor, power, and glory, your kingdom. Jesus, no one is higher. Creation above it all. You reign, let the earth rejoice above it all. All praise is yours above it all. You reign, let the earth rejoice. You have overcome the world. You will always be above it all. Yeah, above it all. Oh, yeah.
Good morning. How are you guys doing this morning? Good. You sound hype like how I sound hype after I get a cup of coffee in me, which is my favorite. Shout out to the coffee team in the lobby. Anyway, my name is Amanda Kozlowski. I'm on staff here. I work with small groups and discipleship, something that I love because it involves all of you and getting you connected with people here at our campus. So we've got a couple things coming up that I want to share with you. If you're anything like me, I do not like to plan things super far in advance. So good news for you, everything I'm talking about today is either happening today or is happening sometime in the next 7 days. So the first thing I want to share with you is we have Thanksgiving baskets coming up this weekend. Something that I didn't know is that Kensington has been partnering with school partners in the area for 29 years putting together Thanksgiving meals. Yes, that's a good clap moment. The Thanksgiving meals for families in need who could use a meal with their family on Thanksgiving. And you guys are a huge part of that. Like, I'm so honored to be part of a community that has helped put food on the table for people for that long. Something that I love about Thanksgiving baskets is it is an opportunity to serve with your family. So I've got little kids, and you know what, just honestly, as an individual, just me. Forget about my kids for a second. Just me thinking about the people in our community that I can love and serve well is an important thing just for me as an adult woman to do. But as a mother paired up with that, knowing that I can have a conversation with my children about what it looks like to love the people in our community and how we can actively take steps towards that is a big deal. This is a great conversation starter for families. And I did this announcement earlier, and my precious son, who is sitting in the back right now running the cameras, was like, "Oh, Mom, your announcement reminded me that I brought $6 today to put towards Thanksgiving baskets. Can you make sure that it gets to the right place?" And that like totally melted me because I'm like, you're so amazing. Like, he brought his own money to put towards Thanksgiving baskets. So Jack brought $6. It cost $65 to put a meal on the table. So I don't know who else in this crowd is going to add to that $6, but if you could consider doing that, I think that would be amazing. So anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is baptisms. So baptisms are next week, Sunday. I love the baptism service. It is my absolute favorite kind of service that we do here at Kensington. I mean, I love the Christmas with like lighting the candles. Okay, that one's special. But baptisms are a celebration about what God has done in people's lives. Like, getting to hear people's stories and just watch person after person after person be baptized, it is such a representation of how good God is and how far he will go to reach us and love us. So you can catch me sitting in the back with my tall husband next to our tall friend. We hang out back there so we don't block people, but we are loud. Sometimes I cry, but we definitely clap and cheer a lot. Baptisms are great. So if you haven't been baptized, that is part of your Christian journey. It's something that Jesus talks to us about and says, hey, this is something that we do where we can tell everyone in the world, I'm a new creation. God has done something new in me, and it's just part of what we do. So if you've never been baptized, please pray about and consider being a part of that this Sunday. Sunday could be your day, and you could have me cheering, clapping, and crying for you. So yeah, please consider doing that. If you want to sign up, you can check out that way there, or we'll be out at the hub. You can ask anybody there under the orange hub sign how to get involved with that. So, talking fast. The last thing I want to talk to you about is something special that we have today. It is the Orion Connect time. So this place is big. Look around. This is like a full room. It was super full in the first service. This is a full room right now. There's a lot of you guys here, and we want to make sure that when you come to this place, you feel like this can be a home for you, a home for your family. We want you to feel known, and we want to know you. I want to know as many of you as possible. So if you have questions about who we are, who Kensington is, any of the ministries that we have, any of the serving opportunities for you and your children, we want to connect with you about all of that. It's super chill. It is not a formal meeting. It is like a, hey, I have these like grapes here for you to eat, and please ask me all your questions. Craig will be there. So please, we're going to be down in the cafe area, which is just, it's down the steps right past the kids' play area. And if it looks like people are just kind of hanging out in there, that's exactly what's happening. But if I'm there, then you know it's go time. Come connect with us. We want to meet you. So anyway, all of my love to you guys, and Craig has a couple of things.
Hey, remind me again, I asked this first service, your son's name?
His name is Jack.
Jack?
Yes, and he specifically said he did not want to be called out, but here we are. Calling him out, because we love him.
I'm not gonna, because he's super cool, and even though he's in the back camera in the booth, I'm not calling him out.
No, we would never do that, no.
But what I think is super cool is, bro, you're making the service happen for thousands of people today as a significant part of it, and I think that's awesome.
I'm proud of him, yeah.
There are a few things that I just wanted to make you aware of really quickly. One of which is, Amanda forgot one thing that's coming up this week that I hope everybody is aware of. It is a national holiday. Are you kidding me? Hunting season, thank you. I swear I'm going back to Clinton Township. You know what? They got me there. What in the heck, Orion? So just be mindful. Let's be in prayer. All of our men and women that are going to be sitting in the woods and in a tree and bringing home some Bambies. I hope to tag a couple myself. But more importantly than that, I do want to talk about some men and women that we want to honor for a moment, because yesterday was an important day for us as a people and as a country, as Veterans Day. And I was thinking yesterday a couple of times, just very mindful of the fact that there are so many things that I am aware that I get to enjoy as privilege in my life because of the fact that there are men and women that have put their lives ahead of ours. Friends, family to me that have done that. And so here's what I would just love to ask very briefly. Won't make a long thing out of it and put you on the spot too much, but if you would honor us, if you have served in any branch of the military at any point, would you just take to your feet for a moment and let us honor you? Thank you. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be launching into a new series called Making Room, and this is our series that leads us into Christmas, which I don't know if you're emotionally there yet, but you better get there, because here it comes. Every year, it's like it sneaks up on us, and Christmas is upon us. We're doing a series called Making Room, where for a couple of weeks leading into Christmas, we're going to sit with the idea of the different people in the story of Jesus, of how it is that they made room, inviting him in, letting him in, and how it is that we can do the same. So one of the resources we've made available for that is actually a devotional book written by somebody on our teaching team here at Kensington called Making Room. And so we would love to put this in your hands as a tool to use while we go through that series. There are stacks of them right now, limited copies available on site for purchase. You can also buy them online anywhere where you buy books, but we figured we'd try and jumpstart this. So we would love this week, next week, as we're selling them, for you to pick up one, pick up a few for your family. I think this will be a really useful tool as we go through this series for 4 weeks leading into Easter, and then also sit in this as a resource during the week, just to prepare our own hearts as we're making room to do more than just go through the motions when we get to Christmas. So again, you can buy them this week, next week. We have limited copies. They're going to go quick, and then you can get them online if you don't get them here. Last is this, before I step off for a minute. One of the things that is just why we do what we do more than any other is life change. Is that we get to be a part of what God does when he intersects our lives to begin to do the work of transformation. And this time of year, if you've been around any length of time, you know it, that we celebrate those stories this time of year, leading all the way up until the end of the year. And so one of the stories that we're going to show you right now is from our Birmingham campus, a young woman named Jasmine. And her story is just how God met her in that community and with all of Kensington has been a part of helping her take the steps as she has walked and trying to understand who Jesus is and what the plans are that he has for her life. So for a couple minutes, here's Jasmine. Here's her story.
One of the things that I love the most is when people give their life to Jesus for the first time. It brings such hope and joy into their life. You know, this is what we're all about, seeing Jesus meet people and impact people. I want to thank you for your generosity to the church, and this is a season where we get to reflect on our giving. I want to encourage you to continue to give and maybe make a gift this season. What it goes to is seeing people's lives changed and transformed for Jesus. I want to share a story with you about a friend named Jasmine who encountered Jesus for the very first time.
So there was one time I was just going shopping with my friends, and some people came up to me handing me this flyer and say, "Hey, have you heard of Jesus? I want to tell you about him." And then he just started, telling me all this stuff. And I was like, whoa. This information was being put in my face. That was my very first impression. So it wasn't good. I was born and grew up in China. So before I moved here, of course, my parents were worried about me. And one thing they said to me before I moved was, "Don't you become a Christian." My husband, he wanted me to at least know about it. And at first, of course, because based on my previous experience, I wasn't excited about it. I started reading the book, The Case for Christ, and that was my very first serious encounter with Jesus. The possibility that there was a God or Jesus was real was 3%. And after reading the book, I think, okay, maybe there's 70-80% of chance that God is real, Jesus is real. That's just opened my mind a little bit. Yeah, we've been to several churches. And the reason we decided to settle at Kensington was because I loved the people there. So we walked in, and somebody was greeting us at the door. They were just smiling and saying, "Good morning, welcome." It was just so welcoming and warm-hearted. I remember us standing behind the control center in the back section of the auditorium, and I don't remember what song was being played on the stage, but I do remember finding myself with tears after worshiping. We heard about the Alpha course through Kensington. So that was, I think, an 8-week course that we just go every week, and we talk to people with different backgrounds. There were skeptics like myself, and there were long-term Christians who were having doubts, who said, "I grew up a Christian, but I just don't know if God is real." The instructor asked you to write down the single question that you wanted to ask God. They put it into an envelope, and they will give back to you at the end of the course, and hopefully your question will be answered. The question I wrote down on my piece of paper was, why does God need to be worshipped by people? And based on what everybody was telling me, God is all good, God is almighty, and I wanted to believe that. But there's this one point in my mind where I think, well, if God needs to be worshipped or wants to be worshipped by a human being, why is he all good? Because to me, that sounds arrogant. I'm glad that that question was answered along the journey. Now I know that he doesn't need it. He wanted for our own good, not for himself. One of the things we talked about during the Alpha course was, do you think it takes a leap of faith to believe in God, to believe in Jesus? And I used to think, yeah, because I used to not believe at all. And the only way I can think of myself as to how to become a believer is a leap of faith. I just didn't see how it could happen. One of the biggest obstacles for me was the Bible, because, come on, when you look at that, it's intimidating. I don't even know where to start, even if I wanted to. We went to the Bible Basics at Birmingham campus. Our instructor, Carl, he says the Bible is not a book. The Bible is a library. It's 66 different books, and you can start from any one of them. And then he started telling the structure of the Bible. Then I thought, okay, that's simple enough. Once you have the structure of a very seemingly complicated thing, it makes it easier, makes it more approachable. I got the greatest Christmas gift. It was an NIV study Bible. So when you open any page of that Bible, half of the page was filled by notes, which is great for people like me, because there are just things I didn't know. And by reading the verse, it still won't make sense to me. But by reading the notes, it makes a lot of sense.
So as Jasmine started attending Birmingham more, we started to get connected a little bit and hear more of her story. And so we went out to brunch with her and my wife, and we started talking about just her family experience and just that idea that her mom even said she shouldn't become a Christian. And we started talking about this idea of honor and shame. And in the Asian culture, which, growing up in it, the honor-shame culture is so strong and can be such a barrier to some of the doubts or questions about following Jesus. And so as we talked about the beauty in which Jesus moves towards us and invites us to meet him and experience his love and his grace and his mercy, what it does is it doesn't take away the tension that we feel, but it gives us a vision of restored honor in our family and in our relationship with him. And I watched as Jasmine started thinking about those words, her eyes started to well up with tears, because something was literally breaking inside of her, breaking open to the possibility that she could experience Jesus' love and he could transform her. And it was this beautiful moment where you saw her life start to take another step towards him on a journey of faith.
At Kensington, I felt everything was offered to me, and it was at my will whether I take them or not. Versus before, I didn't have a choice. It was shoveled down my throat. There's a big difference. Love is not forcing you to do. Love is hoping that you will make the right choice, but still respect your own choice. So back to the earlier question of whether it is a leap of faith. I think I have an answer now to that question. I don't think it's a leap of faith. It's actually a step of faith. So a leap of faith would be like from 0% jump all the way to 100%, where you become a very faithful Christian. But that wasn't the case for me. And for me, it was like 1% or even 0.5% at the time. And over time, there was the last step from 99.9% to 100%. And I can't tell you exactly where that moment was, but it was somewhere along that journey.
I love Jasmine's story, and I know that for a lot of you, we can relate to parts of it. Like, there's few people that have taken the leap and just gone from unbelief to full belief. It's a journey. And sometimes, like she said, it's an incremental journey where it's just a little degree and a little degree and a little degree. But the journey of faith, it is a journey. And it's a journey that usually begins with some mix and combination of curiosity and doubt that drives you to want to understand more. And you begin taking those little incremental steps. And over time, what happens is that curiosity and that doubt kind of begins to fade away and turns into belief and turns into hope. And then it begins to grow. But our spiritual journeys, they're not a linear trajectory. They're not just always up and to the right. It's more of it's a constant hill. It's a peak and then a valley, and a peak and a valley. It's a climb and sometimes a descent. Because what inevitably happens is along the way where you have this growing new hope and belief is that as that continues to grow, there's a point where you encounter questions that seem to have no answer. And not the simple questions, but the deeper questions of life and God and faith and loss. And then sometimes we encounter pain, and sometimes when those come together, moments of pain, or moments of questions with no answer, or pain with no resolve, it can produce, in place of the belief and in place of this hope, it almost can begin to erase it and erode it and produce doubt. And we can find ourselves in moments where maybe our story began like Jasmine's, and it was a story of growing hope, a story of growing belief, and then these questions or maybe these painful moments enter in, and all of a sudden it seems like that got replaced with what feels more like sinking doubt, where it's less the journey Jasmine's presently on and more the journey that would feel like some of the things that we're going to sing about in this next song. And I'll just tell you that the lyrics and the words that are going to be on the screen, they're heavy words, but they're also the reality of life that nobody is free from. And the moments that force us to have to wrestle with the questions and the pain of God and life and existence and all of it, that if we don't know what to do with those moments, they will destroy us. But I think they equally, if not more so, have the power to develop us.
Sometimes marriages don't work, and sometimes babies die. Sometimes rehab turns to relapse, and you're left just asking why. And for all the prayers I've prayed, I still wonder if he is real. And if he is, how is he choosing who he does and doesn't heal? I've tried to run from Jesus, I've started holy wars. I've tried the patient waiting and the kicking down the doors. I've cursed his name in anger with my fist raised to the sky. And in the end, all he's ever been is kind. And I burned my share of bridges. I've learned to tuck my tail and run. Watch the wreckage in the rear view from all the crooked things I've done. And I know that he forgives me, but it's hard to forgive myself. I can't help but think amazing grace is for everybody else. I've tried to run from Jesus, I've started holy wars. I tried the patient waiting and the kicking down the doors. I've cursed his name in anger with my fist raised to the sky. And in the end, all he's ever been is kind. All he's ever been is kind. And I know I wasn't there, but when I look up at the cross, I see the darkest day in history. I guess that's what kindness costs. I tried to run from Jesus, I started holy wars. I tried the patient waiting and the kicking down the doors. He knows I don't deserve it, but he's never changed his mind. And in the end, all he's ever been is kind. All he's ever been is kind.
We had two pretty full rooms today, and I know a lot more watching online as well. And I just know that that means that there's some of us and that many people that would say we're in a really great spot right now, in a season where life is good and family is strong and God seems to make sense. But I also know that there's others of us, like a very honest father that I spoke with just yesterday in this building. He said for 2 years he is still angry at God for the loss of his son that makes no sense, who has cursed his name in anger and raised his fist to the sky. We talked about pain a couple weeks ago and the need to bring our pain to Jesus. And there might be moments of today that feel a little bit similar to that. We're going to talk about how to bring our doubt to Jesus, but the truth is the doubt that matters most, the doubt that has the most potential to be either damaging or to develop us, is doubt that is not free from some pain that's attached to it. The pain of a question that there just seems to be no resolve to, that fractures something potentially in what you believe about God, or where you thought you stood in a foundation of solid understanding, or something that just took a piece of your soul away. Those don't seem to be detached from one another when it comes to the doubt that has the greatest potential to wound us or to grow us. And so I just want to pray for a moment that God would speak maybe before we go any further today, and that today would be a day that whatever we need from him, for him to just sit with us in a place of joy, or to draw near to us in a place of pain and question, that he would do that. So Father, I just come to you now and acknowledge that we need you. And God, I'm just going to say, even for those of us that don't know that we need you, aren't sure if we need you, or maybe are even convinced that we don't need you, I believe we all do. I believe we have been made by your hands, that you dreamt us into existence, that we were your decision before we were our parents' decision. And so God, I pray that you, who have known us before we ever breathed, who know us in this moment, who know everything about us, you know the deepest places of our minds and our thoughts, you know the loneliest places of our hearts, you know the greatest places of joy, you know the dreams that we have. Would you, I pray, in your intimate and your inexhaustible knowledge of us, would you lean in close to us this morning, that we could feel you, we could know you. We've gathered here because of you. So your promises were just even two of us. We're here for that purpose. You'd be here in a unique way. So God, there's a few more than two. So would you, I pray, match and exceed our coming to this place by your entering in. And I pray that you would help me in all that I say today, to say it about you, for you, only to lift up the name of Jesus. Would I honor him? Would I elevate him? And would I make it all about him? And even in my own empty cup that I feel today a little bit, would you fill me up, Jesus? I'm in no less need. On this stage or in the seat, I'm in no less need of an encounter with you than myself. And so I pray for that, and for all of us. In Christ's name, amen. All right, before we dive in, we're gonna take a minute, and we are gonna collect up our offering this morning. A couple things I wanna do a little different today and a little new. Hey, by the way, I love you. You guys are awesome. I love these guys. Thank you, both of you, just for how you help the whole team. So, and Kaylee, well, she'll be out later, and she's gonna wrap us up at the end of the day in a really powerful way. All right, so we're gonna take up our offering this morning, and as always, I want to say thank you, and I want to make sure to even connect moments like this to some of the things that we constantly see. Like these are the moments that help with the Jasmine story and all the different parts of Kensington, that are the things that we do to reach the people that we reach, for all of us, to help all of us taking steps of growth and development. Like this is how it gets done. And then there's the other ways that are even above and beyond that you constantly step into, like Thanksgiving baskets, and making sure that, like, think about this. There will be people that are going to sit around a table in a few weeks, and they're going to have a meal because of the generosity across Kensington that otherwise would have tried to figure out how to creatively put something together with a can in the closet and a loaf of bread. Those are real moments. Like, people are going to celebrate together, and they're going to fill their bellies together because this campus and this community across campuses keep saying yes to opportunity to tangibly love other people. So this is how we get it done. This is why this is so important. This is why we make moments out of this. We don't just pass a bucket and say nothing, because this is missional moment here. This is moments where we believe in what Jesus is doing and what he's called us to do and how he's called us to be a part of it. At the same time, one of the things that we get asked a lot around here, and I get asked a lot at our campus, is, okay, you tell us all the time what we're doing, but how are we doing? Not how are we doing the things we do, but like financially. You tell us how what we give is making an impact, so like how are we doing? Like a family moment. Like, nobody has a budget here that they don't ever talk about at home. If you do, you probably have some problems. But we talk about our budget at home. We talk about our finances. We bring our kids even into some of the decisions that we make. And that's a question we get here a lot. Hey, how are we doing? So one of the things we're going to start doing, not every week, but from time to time, is just a quick moment of, hey, here's how we're doing as a campus, particularly. Not even like all of Kensington, but just for a moment, here's a snapshot of how we're doing at Orion. So you can see on the screen, these are big numbers. You look at these numbers and you're like, holy smokes, these are not what my numbers look like when I look at my personal budget. But here's why the numbers are so big. Honestly, because our vision and our mission is bigger. These are numbers that are all about reaching people. And I tell you this all the time. The minute you become to believe that these numbers aren't about reaching people, then either give your money somewhere else or go somewhere else, because we have ceased to be who God called us to be. But as long as we are, these are why the numbers are big, because we've got a big mission. At this present moment, coming into the end of the year, here's where we're at, just a little bit behind where we'd hope to be at this point of the year. So all I would do is share this with you, one, so that you would know, because these are our numbers. But two, just to continue to ask, for you to ask God, what do we keep doing together as a community? And maybe you're doing exactly what he wants you to do. Keep doing it. Maybe he would nudge you to do more. And frankly, maybe he'd nudge some of you to do less. There are seasons that has to happen as well. I would just ask, whatever you do financially, you do it because God has motivated you to do it, and you're responding to it, and that's it. But we thought it would be valuable for a few times throughout the year to just say more than, hey, thank you, we appreciate you, here's how to give, but also, hey, here's right now at this particular season, here's how we're doing. Good? Thank you. Thank you. I was like, all right, I was going to go back to Clinton Township. Okay, here we go. So I want to tell you a story as we talk about doubt of the first time that I ever actually dealt with a moment of it. And I'm going to go way back because I'm a church rat. I grew up in the church. My parents did not go to church growing up. My dad started going, and my mom right after I was born. So it's all I ever knew, and we were there all the time. And so I have an early experience, and here's my only ask. Don't laugh too much. It's a ridiculous story, but it is a sincere one for me, where I first encountered a moment of going, I don't know how to answer this about God. So we were in a class, not too different than what we do back in Journey, just very different size, arcade kids. Wow, I just went to another church in my mind. You're like, where are you? Oh, it's been a week. So I was in the class back in the room, just like we do here. And it was a group of boys, and I think we were probably around 10 or 8, somewhere in that range, like 8 to 10. And this guy, I wish I could remember his name. He was there every week with us, and I think we probably drove this guy mad. If he had gray hair by the time he was done with us, it's because we gave it to him, 100%. And so I remember we were like all ADD, all off the charts, always squirrely, did everything he could do just to corral us. But I do remember this one time, he had this lesson about God's bigness, and like, God can do anything, basically. And so at the end, we have this discussion time, and we just start throwing questions at him. Again, group of like 10-year-old boys. So our questions were like, could God turn himself into a mountain? It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess if God could do anything, he could do that, guys. We're like, oh. Could God jump the Grand Canyon and clear it? And he's like, yes. I mean, we were theologians in the making. I mean, scholars to be. So we're just like dropping all these questions on him. And then I told you, this is a silly story, right? So then there's a kid in the classroom, the theologian of us all, who posed the question that none of us knew how to answer. And he says, I got one. He goes, could God turn himself into a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And we're like, oh, yeah, you have the floor, young scholar. And so, I don't know what the teachers or what the guy in the classroom said. I mean, at some point, I'm sure he concluded with, you're all ridiculous. Yes, if that's what God wanted to do, he's God. And then young scholar wannabe stopped the whole class with this one. He goes, okay, could God turn himself into a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and eat himself? Our minds were blown. I mean, he shut down the whole room. We were just like, wow. Wow. I don't know what that guy said in response to that. It was probably go home. I don't know what he said. He's probably done with us at that point. But I remember, as young as I was, I distinctly remember sitting there in that moment, and I had this quandary in my head. As simple and ridiculous as it sounds today, this quandary was, oh my gosh, what if there's something God can't actually do? Wouldn't that make him not God? Now, as we grow older, and after you have dealt with the dilemma of the peanut butter and jelly theology and put that one to rest, we do encounter moments of questions that are far deeper than that. Questions that can rock to the core of some of the things that we have previously believed, that seem to start chipping away at the foundation that we thought we stood on in our belief and understanding of who God is, how he operates, how he feels about us, what we can expect from him. And then there's other times that we enter into moments of pain and suffering where something just out of left field comes at us. Moments like yesterday where 1,000 people sat in this room and grieved a 21-year-old man who should not be gone yet. And what happens when these questions that don't seem to have answer, and when these painful moments that don't seem to have resolve, when those collide, it can create a kind of doubt that starts to make us question things that we had previously been convinced of. The kind of doubt that can threaten to destroy, or, if we know what to do with it, can actually develop. And sometimes it literally is just a question. I sat actually with a group of college students recently in a Christian setting. There was a theologian, scholar, college professor who came in to talk to them about things related to the Bible. She teaches at a Christian university, and at one point made the statement to this group of curious, leaned in, listening, wanting to learn students. She made the statement that the Bible can't be fully trusted in everything it says because the Bible teaches that the earth is flat. And I was like, wow, I've spent a lot of time reading the Bible myself. I missed that place. Where? Do tell. And she ended up referencing a place in the Old Testament that says, the angels of the Lord stand on the four corners of the earth. I was like, oh, well, that's what we call an analogy. That's not literally meaning that there's four corners to the earth. But I saw what happened in the days after that is that some of the students walked away from that, and it was their peanut butter jelly moment where they went, wait a minute. And without doing the work to understand that was completely out of context, it created questions for them that needed some resolve, that began to kind of subtly chip away. And then there's other times where maybe it's not a question in and of itself, but it's a question produced by pain. At the church I came from years ago, there was a guy that walked in one Sunday. His name was Ray, and I'll never forget, Ray came in, and Ray was very clear with me up front. I am not a church guy. I don't do church. I've never gone to church. But Ray then went on to share with me that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer. And he had a mass even on his neck. And he, oddly enough, at the same time, had learned that his best friend that he grew up with had also been diagnosed with the exact same kind of cancer in the exact same place, both of them having been given the exact same diagnosis, which is they wouldn't live in the next 6 months. So we prayed over Ray week after week after week after week when he came in. And then he had the surgery that he was supposed to have, and he came back after the surgery and had all the testing. And in ways that the doctors could never fully explain, his cancer was gone. And I'll tell you what that did to his faith was it took off. Ray gave his life to Jesus, got baptized, became a fundamental and a crucial part of the church that I was involved in at the time. His friend died 6 months later, after having taken all the same steps that Ray did. One family grew in faith and one grew in doubt. There are moments in life that are so much bigger than just the simple questions or the simple disruptions. They are the moments where there's a pain that has no resolve, or there's a question that has no answer, that has the potential to develop this doubt within us that can either destroy or it can develop. It's all about what we decide to do with it and where we take it. In the church I grew up in, I don't know if if you grew up in church, if you've had this experience, even maybe in your adult life in church, but doubt was kind of the 5-letter word that was a 4-letter word in the church I grew up in. You didn't talk about it, and you didn't mention it. Like if you talked about doubt, or if you came and you expressed you were having doubt about something about God, or about something about God, or about your relationship with Him, it was often met with some form of criticism or even shame. You kind of belittled it a little bit. You kind of get the side eye, like, deal with it, or suck it up, or what are you, JV Christian? And so there wasn't this real invitation for you to be able to bring your real doubts to anywhere to talk about it. So the place that we often had to go was just ourselves. It was our own minds. It was our own thinking. It was trying to figure out ourselves, what do we actually do with the doubt that we're having? And so part of what we have to figure out is, what do we do with doubt? Because if we're not careful, we'll make the same mistake and feel like we have nowhere to bring it. We just have to wrestle with it because we can't have it. And you know this as well as I do. The reason that we so often have a backlash immediately against doubt is because we see doubt as the opposite of what? Faith. We see doubt as the opposite of faith. And for Christian men and women, people who live in relationship with God largely by faith, what we do often is we misinterpret doubt to be kind of like cheating on God with our faith almost. It's like we're backpedaling. It's like we're pulling away from Him. We see it as a negative thing. But I would ask you this. Do you think that it's possible that doubt is not innately just destructive? I keep saying it, but I'm gonna keep doubling down on this one throughout the morning. Is it possible that doubt in and of itself is not innately destructive, but carries with it equally the potential to be destructive, as it does the potential to develop your walk with God, to develop your certainty in Him, to develop your faith in Him, to develop your experience of Him? Because I believe it does. I believe the difference is all about whether or not we'll take that doubt to Jesus and what we do with it. Matter of fact, on your screens, I think a poignant quote to this morning: the opposite of faith is not doubt, which we so often believe. The opposite of faith is certainty. Because when you have a faith in God that is devoid any room for Him to move in ways different than you could understand or you could perform or you could predict yourself, then you've not got God. You've got something that you can manage, that you can understand. That's something less than God. When we have an understanding of God that has no room for Him to do different than we would do or we would understand, when you've taken away all sense of possible doubt, what you have done is you've reduced God to something manageable. You've reduced Him to something understandable. But the scriptures are clear that God's ways are above our ways. His thoughts are above our thoughts. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Cry out to me and I will answer you." Great, good, God answers. But then this is what He says: with great and unsearchable things that you do not know. So God says, I talk, I answer with mystery. There are things to know about God, but there are absolutely things that are unknowable about Him. There is certainty to be had, but there is equally mystery that will never be resolved until we see Him face to face. And if we're not careful, we can develop, like so many have in the Christian faith, we can develop an idea that doubt is innately bad. And so we need to push it away. And I would contend with you that doubt is actually one of the most crucial tools that can lead you into a more developed relationship with God. It can destroy, but I think it can also develop. In the Bible, one of the most powerful accounts of a moment like this is actually in the life of Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist. Now, John, who was Jesus' cousin, he was a follower, has a moment in his own life that we're going to read about in just a minute, Luke chapter 7, if you want to beat me there. He has a moment in his own life where he encounters pain that produces question that begins to gnaw at him with a doubt. And I think it probably stands even 2,000 years later as one of the best examples of what it is that God gives us invitation to do with our own moments of doubt. Small, great, born out of question or born out of pain, an example of what to do. Now, before we read it, I do want to just context in case you don't know John. So John the Baptist is a big deal. In the Bible, John the Baptist is not just Jesus' family member, he's a cousin, not just a follower of Jesus. Like, this guy was handpicked by God before he was ever born to be the forerunner of Jesus. In many ways, he was like Jesus' spiritual agent. So Jesus, having been prophesied for centuries as the Messiah to come, to take the upside-down world that is and eventually create a method in which to right-side this world and all of us, there is a responsibility placed on John to run ahead of Jesus before he enters into humanity and makes his announcement and tell everybody one message: the kingdom of God is coming. That's John's job. He's out there telling everybody, Jesus is coming. The kingdom is coming. The kingdom is coming. And people are responding. Like, people start following him. He develops his own little group. He starts discipling people. He starts baptizing people. Like, it begins to spread. There's an anticipation that begins to develop. Even before this and before John takes up this mantle, if you go back to some of the stories in the Gospels, you have the story of one time John's mother, Elizabeth, and Jesus' mother, Mary, both pregnant at the same time, come together for a visit. And if you know the story, you know this, but in the womb, John starts doing backflips. Like, he recognizes Jesus in the womb. Like, this is how important this guy is in the life of Jesus. This is how set apart he is for the work that he'll be doing for Jesus. Is that before he ever takes a breath of oxygen, he recognizes Jesus in the womb. And he starts leaping. Then John is born. And there's a season of his life early on where we don't get a lot of detail, but he goes off into the wilderness, he retreats for a season, and when he comes out and emerges, that's when it's game on. And his mission and his message is clear. The kingdom is near, and everything begins to grow. It's like the stage is getting set for Jesus. And then Jesus appears. And he kind of comes out of hiding after 30 years, comes out of the shadows, and he begins to announce, I'm that guy. And he starts to tell John about it. John's one of the first people that actually hears this. So that no longer is John's message, the kingdom is coming. John begins to shift that the kingdom is here. Matter of fact, it was John even that baptized Jesus. And it was while he was baptizing Jesus that there's this audible voice from heaven that says, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." So even if there was any question in John, which at this point I don't think so, but even if there was, like, are you really the Messiah? And are you God? And yes. Like, okay, that's all I needed. Like, I mean, this is John. Here's what I'm trying to communicate. He is a big deal and he is a big believer. There's also a point that as John continues to teach, he starts to send more and more people towards Jesus. And instead of being the forerunner, he becomes the follower. And he starts making it very clear the kingdom is here, the kingdom is here. Well, that becomes a threat to the empire around them because they're the kingdom. And so what they start hearing is a new king, a new kingdom. And so they start to feel threatened by that. As a matter of fact, many of the followers of Jesus early on thought that that's what kingdom of Jesus would end up doing, is going toe to toe and sword to sword and fist to fist. And so what begins to happen is that the surrounding existing kingdoms of power start to become intimidated by it, not to mention the fact that John has a reputation for calling out all the brokenness of the kingdoms and the authorities around him. So he very quickly becomes public enemy number one. And so after all of this that he's been doing for Jesus, instead of finding himself sitting in some right-hand seat of power and authority and influence, he finds himself sitting in a jail cell with the threat of his head being taken off of his shoulders. And I have to imagine that this is not the triumphant kingdom that John had pictured. That when he heard about this new kingdom to come and the king who had come with it, that what he assumed and what he pictured and what he hoped is that the existing kingdom would be overthrown by it. And yet now he finds himself in that kingdom's prison, waiting for a decision on whether or not his head will be taken from his shoulders. Some of you have been in a place in your own life, and some of you, maybe you would describe yourself there right now, where you have gone through something in life that just doesn't make sense if God is on your side. My whole afternoon yesterday consisted of conversation after conversation after conversation of just that. How could God? Why could God? Why did God? Why didn't God? And that's John. In a moment going, if you're on my side, this doesn't make sense. And so he sends questions to Jesus, born out of his pain. Luke chapter 7, this is what we read. John's disciples told him about all these things. These things are the fact that literally in the verses just prior to what we're going to read, there are accounts of Jesus healing a sick man, raising a young man from the dead. And so John's disciples come to him and they start telling him all these things while he's in prison. Hey, here's what Jesus is doing. And calling two of them to himself, John sent them to the Lord to ask this question: are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? This is John the Baptist. Jesus' cousin, his forerunner, did a backflip in the womb, heard the voice of God from heaven. This is John whose whole life was about following Jesus as the Messiah. And here's his question in this moment. Jesus, I've done everything you asked me to do. I ran out in front of you. I told everybody about you. I began to baptize people to lay the groundwork. I baptized you. I've sent my own followers to you. I've done everything that you've asked. And if you haven't noticed, things aren't going so well for me at the moment. And you're out there helping everybody else, but I've got no word that you're coming to my aid. And so I have to ask, Jesus, did I bet on the wrong horse? Is it possible I made a mistake? Like, are you really the Messiah? You're a great teacher. You're a great guy. We're family. Are you the Messiah, or is there somebody else that's actually coming? There's just certain moments where the right kind of question and the right kind of pain can collide in such a way is that it can make you start to question and doubt everything you were previously so certain of and stood so strongly on. And these are the moments where we can often make the wrong move and mistake ourselves in response. And I've done this so many times where I've seen somebody in a moment of question like this or a moment of pain. And what we have a tendency to do is we want to rush in really quickly and try and answer what can't be answered, or try and give resolve prematurely where we don't have the power to give resolve to a pain. But we try to rush in sometimes because we're uncomfortable and we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do with people's questions and we don't know what to do with people's pain. And we want to help and we want to resolve, or we want to deal with our own uncomfortableness. And so we try to rush in and we try to fix it and we try to take care of it and we try to answer it. And what we do often is we just mess things up because there are certain things that we don't have the knowledge to answer or we don't have the power to heal. But this is where sometimes we, in response to some of these deepest soul level questions and pain, we rush too quickly to try to provide an answer, to try to resolve things that can't be resolved. Like yesterday, talking to a dad that asked me, why did God not stop the horrific events that took my son's life a few years ago? Do you know how bad I want to give an answer to him? Do you know how bad I want to say, well, here's what I know. Because of that, here's what's going to happen and the impact his life will have. I don't know. And I can't answer that. I know I've been guilty of trying to in the past. Here's how Jesus answers. You go back to the text. It says in verse 20, when the men came to Jesus, they said, John the Baptist sent us to you to ask, are you the one who is to come? Or should we expect someone else? At that very time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sickness, and evil. And he gave sight to many who were blind. And so he replied to the messengers, go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is the one who does not stumble on account of me. Some of your versions may say fall away. So Jesus answers back to John's question. John, the evidence speaks for itself. Look around, John. The blind are made to see, the dead are being raised, the deaf can hear, the lame can walk. The good news is being delivered to the poor. I'm breaching barriers that previously have not been breached. Like, this is everything prophesied about what the Messiah would do. John, the evidence speaks for itself. But then he says, but blessed is the one who does not fall away on account of me. If I can insert in between those two verses, the evidence speaks for itself, and blessed, here's what Jesus is saying. John, you know I'm the one. You've known it before you were born. And you know it now. But the weight that's on your shoulders is going to get heavier. And at some point, it's become unbearable. And I'm not going to come. Not in time, John. And I pray and hope that because of that, you don't fall away. There's a research group named Barna. They do a lot of surveys in and around the church world, and one that they did in the last few years was to ask a number of Christians who would describe themselves as having fallen away from their faith, what it is that caused them to fall away. And they came up with a list of 10 things that kind of trumped everything else, it seemed. And at the top of that list, the 3 things that people said caused them to fall away or to stumble, as Jesus says to John that he hopes doesn't happen, was number 1, past or bad experiences in the church. Maybe some of you will relate to some of these. Number 2 was the hypocrisy of religious people. And number 3 was the negative reputation of the church. When we talk about falling away, I'll tell you one of the things I see us do often and easiest is point our fingers at these things, or the list of 7 more that will fall on the list if you were to see all of Barna's. But the one thing that I found interesting as I read through the list that wasn't there, that in all of my time of walking with God, that I have experienced personally, I have seen in other people's lives. Do you know what I find so often has more power than almost anything else to cause us to stumble and fall away from Jesus? Jesus. Jesus actually does. Because he doesn't function the way we want him to. He doesn't do what we often want him to. He doesn't think like we think. He doesn't behave like we behave. He doesn't operate like we operate. He doesn't relate like we relate. And we have a whole way of life that we have created. If I could be so honest, you know this. As it is all about us. I mean, even look at the way that we have shaped some of the most important documents in our country to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. I'm not saying any of those things are innately bad. I believe it's all and more that God has in store for us. But the problem is right here and now in this broken, upside down, fallen world, what we tend to do is we tend to make it heaven now and then make it all about us. It's about what I can get, and it's what I want, and it's what can be done for me. And then we turn God into the agent to get that all done and to take care of us. And what we end up doing is creating a life where when God doesn't come through, and when God's answer to us is, I'm actually gonna leave you in this prison, I'm gonna leave this weight on your shoulders, is that we lose our minds because it doesn't fit into the construct that we've created for who God should be and how God should behave. And we've neglected that our God cannot be contained in our ways. And there's a temptation I even have, even with John's story. I want to give you greater resolution out of John's story that I can't give and would be inappropriate. Well, John gets beheaded, yes, but here's the result. And this many people will come to faith directly because of John's head being lopped off of his shoulders. And here's how the church directly grew because of it. And I can't. I would demean the text, and I would demean the work of God in our lives and in John's life. I can't tell you exactly why John was left in prison and why Jesus, who could have gone there and marched him out of those gates, why he decided not to. I can't tell you that, but I can tell you he did. He did choose to leave him there. And then ask John at the end of it all, I pray, John, I pray, John, I pray, John, that you don't fall away from me because I don't do what it is that you expect me to do and because I don't come through the way that you expect me to come through. This is where doubt has the ability to either destroy or develop. The only difference between the two is one simple thing. And I don't mean it to sound as cliche as it will, but it is the reason we called this series what it is. The one thing that defines whether or not it will destroy you or develop you is whether or not you bring it to Jesus. You got to bring it to him. This is what John does. When he's got a question, where does he go? He goes directly to Jesus. He doesn't go look for the latest book on Jesus. Well, this guy I heard wrote a book, Uncovering the Real Jesus. I'm gonna go read that. He doesn't go listen to another teacher. Hey, I wanna hear what you think about Jesus because I'm having some quandary. He doesn't pull up his podcast and go to the next church and the next conference and he doesn't listen to somebody else's voice. He doesn't go to his friends. Hey, I'm having some quandary about Jesus, and we'll put our heads together. What do you think? And what's been your experience? None of those are bad things, and they should all fall in some point of our journey to try and find resolve and answer to pain and question. But where does he go first and foremost? He goes directly to Jesus with it. Again, sometimes because of the stereotype we carry of how we shouldn't be people that have any sense of doubt as Christians, the place we don't want to go is Jesus. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I'll just be mad at you. No, he has a very big chest and you can pound on it very hard. Take it to him, the questions to him, the doubt to him, the pain to him, and wrestle with him. This is John the Baptist going, are you actually God? You're like, could I ask him that? If you haven't, you've not been walking with him very long. I asked those questions of him this week. There are questions that make no sense to me about the horrible things that we do to one another in this world. There's no sense to me why some people I watch him heal, and then there's scoundrels that continue to live and hurt others. But I'm bringing those questions to him. And I think the only thing that will help in these moments is if you bring them to him as well. And when you do, you just need to understand this. He may answer, he may not. He may resolve the pain, he may not. He does answer John, but he doesn't resolve the pain. He leaves him in jail, and John will be beheaded. He'll have his head put on a platter and paraded in front of a court of leaders, wicked and sadistic. And in that moment, Jesus didn't save him. but he did save him. And so what do we do if you're ever in a moment like that yourself, of quandary of pain and question with either no resolve or no answer? How do you bring it to Jesus, and what do you anticipate experiencing? Well, I will tell you this. When you bring it to him, I can't tell you how he'll meet you. I can't tell you when he'll meet you. I can't tell you how quickly he may resolve it or if he will not at all. But I will tell you this, and I have seen it true in my own life, and I've seen it true in so many other lives. Many of you, even in this room, who I know your story, is that what he will do is he will lead you through those moments of doubt into greater, deeper, richer experiences of his power, his presence, the community of his people, and his perspective over all things. I want to give you just a couple of those very quickly with some scriptural reference. Because I don't want you to ever think I'm just creating some cliche rhyming, all starts with the letter P ideas. These are things that we see in the Bible that God says, this is what I'll do for my people in these moments of brokenhearted pain, or questions with no answer. On your screen, if you'll look up for just a minute, doubt, I think, number one, it can lead us to experiences of God's presence. Here's what Psalm 34 says. This is David. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. There is a promise in Scripture that when there is something fracturing in here, that God does something uniquely different to draw close to those moments of our life where we are broken. And I would contend with you that doubt is the product of brokenness. There is something breaking, even if it's just a question and there's no pain attached to it. There are questions that begin to chip away at the foundation of things that we stand on and believe, that can get fractured. There's a broken heart sense that can happen. Like, wait, I thought this is what you do. Or I thought I could be certain about this about God, and it begins to affect your heart. It's because it's a relationship with him. And so when doubt sets in, it is something against the heart. And part of God's promise is that when you're in that place of brokenheartedness, I will be close to the brokenhearted. Part of his promise is I will draw near to you in a unique way. If you bring your questions, you bring your pain, when you present your doubt to him and go, God, I don't know what you're going to do with this, God, but here's what it is, and I'm throwing it at you. I think part of what he does is he begins to move closer to you in a unique way and in a tender way. And what he has taught me time and time again in those moments is that his presence is more powerful than his provision. That what he does to be with me is more powerful than what he can do to provide for me. And there are some of you in this room that you have suffered at levels I have never suffered at. And so I have to default to your stories because many of you have shared the same. That in tremendous places of pain and loss and questions born out of that and doubt that has gnawed at you is that you have experienced the presence of God so powerfully that even though there is pain, you have met with him in a way that you would never want to exchange. I'm telling you, his presence is more powerful than his provision. I think our doubt also has the power and the ability to lead us into God's power itself. Again, up on your screen, this is the Apostle Paul that will write these words. Paul, if you don't know his story, did not start out as a believer in Jesus, was actually the biggest antagonist against it, tried to crush Christianity, becomes a follower. His life was not an easy life. He was sought after. He was persecuted. They tried to stone him to death. I mean, this was a guy that was well acquainted with pain and questions, with doubt, all of which God met him in the midst of. Well, here's one of the things that Paul realized. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take this away from me. If you know the text, he's talking about something that he's been plagued with, that scholars for centuries have tried to figure out what it was. We have no idea. Here's what we know. Paul has something in his life that's plaguing him that he's begged God to take away from him, and God's answer has been this: my grace is sufficient for you. In other words, no. But this is what he says: my power is made perfect in your weakness. And so this is Paul's response then. Okay, then I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, that Christ's power may rest on me. We don't like to even talk about our weakness. We are so fiercely independent. We're going to take care of life. We're going to get it done. We don't expose where we have weakness. Here's what Paul learned. Somebody who came from a position of power. He was among the elites when he was against Christianity. This was a man that sat in the highest seats, that had the highest reputation, born in the right neighborhoods, went to the right Ivy League school. Like, this was a man that knew what it was like to wield power. And his conclusion was, the greatest form of power I have ever experienced is when I'm actually weak. And when Christ's power rests on me. He says, then there is a perfection made in power in my weakness. I would just tell you what I have experienced and what I have witnessed is time and time again, men and women who have brought their questions and brought their pain and brought their doubt to God and have experienced a form of power that is not experienceable in any other way, where he actually takes your weakness and he transforms it into a divine supernatural power. I think our moments of doubt also have the ability to lead us into greater experiences of God's people. Again, this is part of what Paul would once write to the church that he was in relationship with, and it helped start in Corinth. He says, praise be to the God, the Father of our Lord, Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles, so that we can comfort those in trouble with the comfort we ourselves are receiving from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. If we are distressed, it is for your comfort and your salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which produces in you patience, endurance of the same sufferings we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that just as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our comfort. Here, if I can sum this up, here's what Paul is saying. I think it's actually very similar to what a grieving dad said to me in the lobby yesterday. He said, the loss of my son has created a pain that I am confident will one day be somebody else's power. I'm like, wow. I think there is something so unique about the Christian community. When I sat earlier in the week and I talked with a mom and a dad and siblings who would lay their brother and son to rest yesterday, and they talked about the amount of meals that have come to their home. They said that we've got more food than we know what to do with. We've had gifts randomly left at our door, gift cards. And she just went on to say that there has been an experience of the community of Jesus' body coming around them that they have no idea how they would have otherwise gotten through this or would get through this, and they've never experienced other than in this moment and in this situation. People can love people. We can do that whether you love Jesus or don't love Jesus. But if it is true that the Spirit of God lives in us and that us together makes up the body of God, I will just tell you, there is something powerful that happens when God's body comes around a hurting person with questions or pain or doubt. There is something supernatural that will flow out of that community into your life that I will just tell you, you cannot experience with any other group of people. But you can with the body of God because his Spirit flows through those moments and through that community. Our doubt has the ability to lead us, if we allow it, into greater experiences of part of what is the power and potential of this community called the body of Christ. And then lastly, I'll just give you this, is that I think doubt has the ability to lead us into greater experiences of God's perspective. It can lead us into having God's perspective. One more place I want you to see on the screen. Out of the scriptures. This is Paul writing to the Roman church. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing, not with the glory that will be revealed in us. For the creation awaits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and the glory of the children of God. We know that the whole of creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption as sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. Here's what he's saying. He says, listen, the whole world is groaning. He doesn't just say you and I. We groan. We understand loss. We understand questions. We understand doubt. But Paul says The whole planet is groaning. We see it in every wildfire, earthquake, thunderstorm, all the brokenness of literally the system and the world in which we live. He says the world is even groaning, going, this is not what God has in store, just like we do. But what he says at the end is, but we're waiting. We're patiently waiting. Waiting for what? For the fact that this life is preparation for eternity. You were not made to just live 70 years or 80 years or less. You and I were made to live for all of eternity. Whether or not there is a disruption on this side of it at a shorter age than we would ever anticipate or not, whether or not on this side of it there's pain that we didn't want or questions that we have no answer to, here's the reality. This life is preparation for the whole of existence God has made you for, not the opposite. And sometimes we lose perspective of that, and we bank everything on the 70 or 80 here and now, so that when there's questions with no answer, when there's pain with no resolve, it throws us, it rocks us, instead of pulling back to see God's perspective and go, this life is that, eternity is this. We're made for eternity, and not some ethereal float around weirdness in the sky, but an eternity where God remakes the heavens and this planet. One of the hopes that I have is of the people that in my pain I've said goodbye to, I'll see them again. And not with angel wings and harps. We're going to be walking the streets on this planet. We're going to be sitting in meadows on this planet. We're going to swim in lakes again on this planet one day when it is remade right and perfect. A day when there is no more loss. There is no more sadness. There is no more pain. There is no more suffering. On a day when all of your questions are answered and when you know fully and are known fully. And Paul says, it's not here yet, but it's coming. And so we wait. And even though we groan, and the planet does with us, we know that the groaning's not our end, that the glory of Jesus is. And so even in the midst of pain that may never be resolved, or questions that may never be answered, we can still worship Jesus and celebrate him as sovereign, as beautiful, as right, as perfect, as good. The next song that we're going to sing is, you may sing it because you may recognize the words, but I would encourage you to sit in it and to let the lyrics wash over you and to just ask yourself, what is it you need to bring to Jesus right now? Maybe it's just joy. Sit there and celebrate that with him. But maybe there's a pain, a question. Maybe there's something right now that is your sense of sitting in a prison cell going, why would you, how could you, if you're for me? Bring it to him. Bring it to him. And I don't know how, when, or where, or to what degree, but I promise you, if you do and if you stay that course, you will know his presence, his power, his perspective, and the beauty and joy of his people like nothing else can show you.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest nights. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. Known you is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God.
And so, God, I just pray right now that as we move out into the rest of our week, that our experience would be your goodness chasing us down. And for some of us, we're living in it right now. We're living in just a season of goodness. And I pray that we would just celebrate that. And I pray that we would also just drip that out of our lives into the lives around us. And for those of us in a season right now where we need your goodness and we need the reminder of it and we need the experience of it, God, would you chase us down with it? Thank you that as this world and as our lives groan with questions, with pain, with doubt, that we can also, beyond all of that, have hope that the groaning will one day end, that the questions will be answered, the pain will be gone, and that a new order will begin. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, as you leave today, remember we have Orion Connect happening down in the cafe. We'd love to meet you down there. We have books for sale for the series coming up in a few weeks out near the hub, so grab one of those. And we will see you next Sunday as we continue on. Have a great rest of the week.
Man.
Whoa.
Good
Whoa.
service. Yeah,
That's all I
very good
got,
service.
Jesse. That's all I got.
That's all you got? Moving on.
No, I'm
Yeah.
serious. But seriously,
That was a great
amazing service.
Yeah, 100%.
So Jesse's got some words of wisdom.
Oh gosh,
right?
I don't know about wisdom,
Yeah,
but yeah,
he
just
does.
some takeaways.
He's got it.
Things we learned that I hope to take on through the rest of the week.
Yeah, that's good.
Talking through the idea of doubt, and I've always, again, growing up, it was me too. It was the opposite of faith was always doubt. And kind of what that looked like. So don't doubt, don't talk about it, don't do those things.
You weren't
but
supposed
instead,
to.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to.
Right, exactly.
But instead, the idea of the opposite of faith being certainty, because you're sure of everything and you don't ever question, you don't stay curious, all those things. And that's a beautiful thing. And then it leads us into these amazing things that he walked through, which all start with the same letter, which is awesome.
I love that.
But the doubt can lead us into an experience with the presence of God.
Cool.
Doubt can lead us into an experience with God's power, which I absolutely love. I think we lack that a lot of times because we don't doubt and don't step into those moments. But that doubt can also lead us into an experience of God's people and having the church come around, which we've seen over the last even couple days in some different situations. And then doubt just inviting us in to experience God's perspective. And I know that's the one that kind of resounded
that's the one that
with you.
resounded with me earlier service. And I need to go back and listen again. I think this is going to be a twofer for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Going to have to listen again.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
good,
gosh.
though. Yeah.
Great day.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful service. We just are so glad you guys took the time to be with us today.
100%.
And we're so excited to invite you back to next week. What's happening next week?
Baptisms next week. So if you haven't signed up or you want to just ask questions,
Exactly.
reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation with you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Have an
We'll be
awesome
back
week,
next week.
everybody. Enjoy that sunshine. What's happening tonight
Last
with
thing,
students?
Students
go.
tonight, I always want to leave with that.
Yes.
Tonight we are heading into 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, just walking through what it looks like to kind of share our faith and what that looks like for us. So
cool.
And then next week, Friendsgiving, onesie night next week. So be a part of that. We'd love to have you there. I know. Onesies
Oh my
are the
gosh.
best.
I wish I
Anyway.
was a student again.
Yeah. Well, me too, actually. But anyway,
I love
yeah.
it. I
it's
love
awesome.
it. Have a great
Have a
week,
great day, guys.
everybody, and we will see you next week. Take care.